have a say into what happens in their community.
Meka Whaitiri.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, I'm happy to take a call on clauses 1 and 2 of the Resource Legislation Amendment Act. And can I start, sir, with sharing a couple of documents that I received today from the Guardians of the Aquifer from Hawke's Bay, sir. And one was dated the 15th of November, raising an issue with the Minister of Māori Development, Tūroro Flavell, around drinking water versus drilling for oil and gas. And in this letter, sir, they highlight where the Māori Party's position back in November was on 360D, sir, because clearly for many people around this country, the broad-based powers of the Minister has been a very contentious issue raised by many submitters. In this letter, sir, they urged the Māori Party to vote against the 360D. In fact, in this letter, they acknowledge that the co-leader of the Māori Party, Marama Fox, actually helped write their submission, which was an interesting piece of background. But, sir, if I take the House back into the election 2014, another letter was written to the Minister of Māori Development, Tūroro Flavell, raising the very important issue of fracking in the Hawke's Bay and probably around the country. And on this letter, sir, they ran a questionnaire where they asked political or members of Parliament to answer two questions that the Guardians of the Aquifer asked various members. And the question went like this. Certain locations and regions in New Zealand should be excluded from hydraulic fracking. Among them are catchment areas for drinking water. Additionally, tectonically stressed areas or regions with a combination of artesian groundwater and migration pathways, faults, should be excluded from hydraulic fracking operation. There were two questions, Mr Chair, that members or political candidates were asked to answer. The first question is, do you agree with the statement?
Order. I'm just going to ask the member to fairly soon relate this letter and the discussion around it to the detail of the bill.
I will, Mr Chair. And
who said that? Order. I probably should have stood up in order to speak rather than advising the member like that. But I don't need advice from David Bennett of that type. Meka Whaitiri.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So the two questions, do we agree with this statement or disagree? It was circled, I agree. Will your party support such exclusion zones? Again, yes was ticked. And that was signed from the Māori Party leader, Tūroro Flavell. Sir, the point I'm making is that if it wasn't for the Māori Party, this bill would not be making its passage through this House. And I have just shared with the House two documents where both leaders of the Māori Party have come up swinging really strongly for communities like the Aquifer, Friends of the Aquifer in Hawke's Bay. Sir, nobody wanted this bill, and it was only the two votes of the Māori Party that ensure that Nick Smith, the Minister, got this bill through the House. And it is clear, sir, that a secret deal has been done with this government outside the Select Committee. And we have been debating this bill quite rigorously for the last two evenings, and I thought we would have had a bit more around what has been compromised in this bill, sir. After months of sustained pressure from opposition parties and high-profile campaigns run out of Hawke's Bay, the Māori Party have proposed amendments, sir, which excludes genetically modified organisations. But when we look down and examine the Māori Party, particularly the members' own SOP, it was raised that her understanding of what crops covered and what we got from the Minister himself were two different things, Mr Chair. And so there is this promise being made from the Māori Party to all people, particularly in the Hawke's Bay, around what they have gained for not only iwi around the country, but clearly for people passionate about the environment. And what's been exposed in this House through the debating of this bill, sir, is that they have walked away empty-handed. And the other letter, and I won't go into it, sir, but I've got here that I'm happy to table in the House, is the statement from the Māori Party that it was the iwi leaders group that were also instrumental in providing. Mr Chair?
Meka Whaitiri.
We're very instrumental in informing the Māori Party. So if we peel this back, sir, the Māori Party has not only identified that their own fault in the SOP around making it really clear what crops were for our organic growers in the Hawke's Bay and in Northland and in Auckland, but they've also thrown the iwi leaders' chairs under the bus by naming them as being very, very close to the Māori Party and coming up with that SOP. And we also unfortunately heard that Pure Hawke's Bay, sir, which are reputable organic growers in Hawke's Bay, also were thrown under the bus by the Māori Party when Marama Fox last night indicated that it was their wording that went into her SOP. Now, we all know, sir, that we all have relationships with different people. They help inform us as politicians, but one thing we do not do, sir, is we never throw those sources or those relationships under the bus. So it is going to be an interesting time, sir, as this bill goes past its final reading in the House, that the Māori Party will be held accountable. They will be held accountable for the support of an absolutely flawed bill. They will be held accountable for the actions that they have taken. And we look forward, when we go to the campaign, on the campaign trail, for them to defend their position in supporting this, and the so-called gains that we've uncovered aren't gains at all, sir. They're actually sold out. They've sold out organic growers in this country. They've sold out iwi Māori. They've sold out councillors. They've sold out developers. And they will be held accountable, sir, as we go on the campaign trail coming up shortly. Sir, this is a terrible bill. All the way through, we have made it really clear on principle and on parts of the bill that do not protect our environment, as we all understand the RMA was originally made for. We have now turned the tide. We have gone from protecting our environment, sir, into economic development at all costs, and there are no checks and balances in this bill. I do not commend this bill to the House, sir. It's going to be a very strong issue as we go into the campaign this year, and Nick Smith and the National Government, along with the Māori Party, will have to stand and be accounted for these actions.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary opinion will say no. The noes have it. A party vote is called for.